Welcome to the Garage Grit Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Hurlock of A.A. Shop Marketing. Our hope is to unite shop owners to tackle common stress points and challenges that they're experiencing within the auto repair shop space. Our mission is to guide you towards the best solutions for your shop. So tune in, join the conversation, and let's move your business forward. Welcome to the Garage Grit Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Hurlock. And on this podcast, we're helping as many shop owners as we can by having conversations about different situations within the shop, possible stress points. And I think that by listening or even having the conversations right here, we can all improve, all the shop owners can improve their positions or their processes. And you might actually be listening and say, hey, that person sounds exactly like me. And so please tune in, dial it in, and hear what everyone has to say. Today's topic specifically is about transparency and communication with customers. And so we're going to, with that, let's actually just jump in and start talking with each other. We've got three guests here, one from Missouri, one from Pennsylvania, one from Illinois. And so let's actually start with Pennsylvania. Kevin, why don't you jump in and share with us a little bit about yourself and about the shop and about the area that you're in.
Sure. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate you having us on today. My name's Kevin, Millevoi Tire and Automotive. We're just outside the Philadelphia area called Bucks County. Population is about 100,000 where we're at. Been in business now for 25 years at this location. Family owned, second generation. We run about 80 cars to 100 cars a week through the shop. We have 5 technicians with 2 service advisors.
Nice. Bill, you want to go next?
Yeah, Bill Stegich, Glenview, Illinois. Name of the shop's Hynes Auto Service in a suburb of Chicago. Got a wonderful wife, 4 kids under the age of 5. So between the shop and them, things stay pretty busy. We've got 6 lifts and then a 4-post for alignment machine, 4 techs, 5 if you include myself, and then 2 service advisors, and took this shop over about 8 years ago from the previous owner.
Okay. And how populated is your area? How far are people coming to visit you?
Most of our clientele is probably within a 4 to 5 mile radius.
Okay, good. Jeremy, how about you?
Jeremy McQueen in Branson, Missouri. We have about a 10,000 square foot facility. We got 13 lifts. We have 6 techs in the shop, 2 service writers, 1 parts manager, and myself. And been in the business that started about 18 years ago. So I'm second generation as well. And we are, our population is around 25,000, but we're a tourist town. We have about 8 million visitors during the summertime, and then during the wintertime, it's cricket. So we have highs and lows and our ebbs and flows of the shop. But we usually average around 600 cars a month. So
See, right away, I'm thinking, do you reduce staff in the wintertime? Or at least their hours?
No, we can't. No, that's really hard for them to do. So
Sure.
we just try to market to our local people. And during the summertime, I could probably have 20 techs working, but we just push them off and just say, I'm sorry, we can't help. So that hurts on the local side because during the summertime, a lot of those slots get filled with the tourism. Yeah, it's a little bit of a problem.
But it sounds like the focus of your customer base is the people who live in Branson, who live in the area.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely my focus because that's what kind of evens out everything for me. So.
And that ties into what we're talking about today, because if I'm just in a random town and I'm just driving through and I need something emergency based, please fix this real quick. I care a little bit less about what's on the ticket because I'm gone. I'm moving on. I'm not going to be back in this area again. They solved my initial problem and that's it, right? Whereas if you want me to be a recurring customer every single 3 or 5,000 miles, then the communication obviously is a little bit different potentially. And that's the focus for today's show. And so I'd love to have everyone just jump in. I don't know. I'm thinking from what I understand about tickets, if you did put too much information, the tourist who initially is happy when they leave your shop, they're probably going to look at that and then go back to their own hometown where the market is different and say, was this the right amount? And then they leave you a potentially different review than the one they left when they felt how they went based on the fact that you fixed their situation. And the less is more approach makes sense there. But I find it interesting because I already know you, from previous conversations, Jeremy, that you actually have a less is more approach on your tickets. But so how does that work with your existing customer base? Like, what do they also appreciate that less is more?
For the most part, most people don't look at the tickets. Most
Okay.
people don't itemize it and just go through it. And there are, I would say, maybe 10% of my customers that will go through and just pick in and just look at the details and, oh, I could have got this part really for $19, but you charged me $36. What's the difference? So most of my customers are just developing that trust, developing, that relationship with them. They know that I'm not going to overcharge them. We're very competitive with the shops that are around. So they're going to get a final number from the shops that are down the street, and they're going to get a final number from me. And then they can compare those numbers. But with my out of town tours, we don't treat them any differently than a customer I've had for 20 years. We give them a price. We diagnose the car. We give them a price. It's the same price. It's not inflated. But typically, my prices are going to be cheaper than most areas around the country. Where I'm part of a shop fix group. I don't know if you've heard of shop fix, but large group of shop owners, and I know what the shop rates are around the country. We're one of them. Really, as far as pricing, I don't have any problem with being deemed as being overcharged when the tourists come through. So,
Bill and Kevin, have you guys done that? Have you actually looked at your prices compared to local competitors as well as nationwide?
We have big dealers around us, so most of them are well over us. So in that regard, we can pretty much stay confident that we're less than them. We've got a fair amount of independents also that have been taken over by a buying group, Michigan. So they've all kind of realized the labor rate amongst those shops. So from, say you're talking with other people that are working there, we kind of gauge on where they're at. But everyone in this area is pretty friendly with no independent wants to charge $50 more than the one down the street, because everyone wants to, keep the customers they have. There's not as big an influence on stealing other ones as far as what we've seen anyway, especially with how close we are. But get those calls all the time. Are you going to raise your rate? We're thinking about going up, So every shop's a little different, I think, in what their overhead is and they're paying their employees, but don't seem to have much trouble with that.
Okay. How about you, Kevin? Have you actually looked nationwide versus competitors in the area?
We do. We do a comparison. Usually once a year, we'll start calling around and see what rates are. The bad shop will give you the rate. The good ones won't. Jeremy, we're also part of Shop Fix Academy. I'm sure like you, we don't talk rate over the phone. We talk everything else. But yeah, we have a good working relationship with a lot of the shops in the area. So you get to know what their rates are, and we like to stay in and around them. The big box stores, usually you'll find a way to get their rates. So we'll do comparisons. And then the dealerships, the higher they go, the better. So I hope they continue to raise their rates. It just makes it easier for us.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay. Let's talk about what actually information is being included on the tickets. When someone comes in, and let's talk estimates, and let's start with estimates, and then you can talk about whether or not they actually mirror the end ticket. But let's talk estimates first. If someone comes in and says, I need something done, how much detail are you giving them? Or are you just giving them that's going to cost X? Kevin, how about if you go first this time?
Well, we use the program called Techmetric. I don't know if you guys are on that as well, but it's very easy to print an estimate out, or not print it out, to give an estimate to a customer. We actually went paperless about a year ago. So everything we do now is virtual. But if somebody comes in for an estimate, we try and get all of their information, the vehicle's information, and then depending upon what the job is, some people just want the bottom line price. It's tires, we'll price them out. If it's labor, we'll break it down when they need to know it or see it. But we get as detailed as we have to be on that estimate. But we don't put part numbers, we don't put brands. Basically, what the part is and what the price is, and then they get a total on that ticket.
You said as much as you need, or did you mean as little as you need? Are you trying to have, is an estimate usually one line, or is it 10 lines?
No, one line, typically one line. When I say as much as we need.
One line. And then if they push back, then you give them a breakdown.
We'll always give them a breakdown. Yeah. But ours are pretty detailed where our customers know what they're paying for, what that brake pad costs, and what that labor costs. Okay. So that's listed out individually on there.
And I love the fact that you're virtual or paperless. How do you actually deliver that? Is that a text message? Is that an email? Is it up to the customer?
Up to the customer, but mostly text. Most people want a text
Okay.
message, and more people are coming in, are happy to get the virtual, no more paper.
Interesting. And that's a feature inside your shop management
It is.
software. Good. Bill, how about you?
So as far
No
as our
worries.
tickets go, we know part numbers. We try and eliminate the brand. So they might say Napa brake booster. We'll, limit it to just brake booster. We're attached to a parts store next to us. So occasionally we'll get the pushback from a customer, not very often in our area. But you'll get some people that'll walk up there for a battery and then come back here and say, well, why is it, it's a different price? Aren't you the same place? Or so when you're working that close, we found that less is more for us anyway. Is less conversation, and also doesn't mean that everything comes from them either. So that trying to get people to understand that, hey, several places to get stuff from, and try and make the best decision for them. But also, in my opinion, what really comes down to as far as how much transparency there is on the invoice is really what your warranty is and what you're willing to stand behind. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you tell me you got that part from the dealer. If in 2 years it goes bad and you won't, another one in, stand behind it, then it makes no difference to me where you bought it from. So that's the one thing that I will say hands out the most on an invoice from us is, also just your reputation of, something goes wrong. How willing are you to make right by it?
So what shop software are you using? What shop
We use
management
Napa
software?
Tracks.
Napa Tracks. Okay. All right. And okay, so that's interesting. And so you're actually going in and deleting, or is it just a setting that you have inside of Napa Tracks as far as hiding the brand name?
No, it'll just, when you transfer something over from a Parts Tech or one of those companies that you can search parts for, usually transfer however they have it named will come over that way. So,
and have you always been doing it this way, or has it evolved a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely has evolved. It used to just be however it got transferred is however it would stay on the ticket. And what you come to realize is the more that other shops integrate or other stores integrate, some people have everything in caps, some people have words in caps and not others, and so all of a sudden the invoice becomes all in caps lock. The other that's
why are they yelling at me on line 3?
That's continued to be a challenge. But and then as I mentioned earlier, the as far as like labor rate goes, we used to have it broken down by what the labor rate was per hour, and then there'd be a quantity tab on the side that would be a tenth of that hour, and people would get all confused that couldn't realize that paying a full hour, they're paying a tenth of the hour. So we just went to make job is X amount in labor, and then here's the parts breakdown of pads and rotors or whatever. Lane is. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, the part that we touched on a little bit already is the idea that some people are like, hey, I can get this battery for X dollars somewhere else. And I come from a background where, so my father was an electrical contractor, and I would look at his invoices and I'd be like, what are you doing? Why are you not marking up the actual product, the actual wire, the actual electrical box?
Yeah.
And because in my mind, he knew what to get for that particular situation, which bulb or which brakes or which parts need to go for that is going to work best in that particular vehicle. And I think there's a value in that knowledge, not just the hours of putting it into place. And so it makes perfect sense for me for someone to mark it up. And I recognize that the general consumer might not have that same perspective, but to me, it makes sense to have a 20% or more markup on a product. Don't tell it to my mechanic. I'm fine with him discounting the parts. Now, Jeremy, you actually had a switch though. You actually changed. You actually were providing more detail, and now you're providing even less detail. And you said it before that it was, before we were talking, you said it was about a year and a half ago that you made that switch. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing. Tell us what you're doing now, and tell us what prompted that switch. Was it just one too many customers poking the bear?
Yes, but that wasn't the only reason. We also use Techmetric along with Kevin, but we switched over to the coaching program through ShopTech, and they made some of the recommendations that I've made in my shop, and so we integrated that because of the recommendations that they had, not necessarily because of problems that we had with presenting that information, but it definitely helped alleviate some of the problems that we had with that. Before, like I said, it's not a huge percentage of people that will argue with you. So those small percentages of people, really just trying to get them out of doing that, I think changing over to just listing everything out has helped that. And I don't break it down if they want to. I just flat out tell them, this is our bid price. This is what we'll do the job for. We have markup on our parts. That's part of our business. That's what keeps the lights on. Our industry is weird in how the business is run. I think, in my own personal opinion, if the business was run the way it should be run, we wouldn't market parts at all. We would sell parts for what the parts are, and then we would sell our labor for what our labor should be, and we sell our labor. But the way the industry is, you can't do that. I'd have to charge $150, $200 for an oil change. I can't do that. But the way the industry is set up, we have to charge markup on our parts. People don't like that. People want to go down and they want to compare you with not the shop down the street. They want to compare you with what it's going to cost for them to do the job, or what it's going to cost for their friend to do the job, or the shade tree mechanic, or the mobile mechanic that will come in and do the job, at their house in their driveway, with, like Bill was saying, with no warranty. But the cost of business, you have to mark up parts. I have to mark up my parts to keep the lights on. I can't sell my labor or what it takes for me to be in business and to stay in business.
As I mentioned, I think you should be able to sleep better at night knowing that you know what parts to order. If they knew what parts to order, they might have tried to do it themselves. But not only did you know what parts to order, but you knew how to implement those parts. So I think there's value in that knowledge. I think there's a fee for that knowledge. And if you're not marking up the parts, then you need to mark a consulting fee. You need to include the time to order the parts as part of your billable time. So that's another way to look at it potentially. But I think that's fair. I'm on board. I think you should actually mark up their parts. But I think you're right. If you actually charge a $250 hourly rate, people would be like, "What are you doing?" So that'd be pretty high. So anyway,
can I ask a question?
All right. So you switch because, please, Kevin. Yes.
Jeremy, so similar philosophy that we're coached on, what you're doing. So let me ask you a question. When you do, say, a starter job, do you break down the part and the labor, or is it just one price, starter job installed?
One price. It's listed out what the part we're putting on and what the labor's for. But when it's listed down there I don't have those check marks on my Techmetric. Like, all they get is one price.
So starters 200, labor's 100. You just have a $300 flat fee at the bottom, and it shows that's what it is.
That's it.
I've heard him preach that, and I haven't done that way yet. So you're fucking that.
I haven't had any kickback hardly whatsoever doing that.
Now, how about when your advisors sell the job? Are they, I guess, depends on the customer, explaining to them what the part and the labor is, or is it just $300 and that's that?
It's just what the job is. Yeah. So when they explain it to them, they'll break it down per job. This is what your starter's going to cost. This is what your tire rub needs to cost. This is what your brake flush is. And then they give them a total of the entire bill. Like, today we're going to get you fixed for $1,800 and get you out the door and get you maintained the way your car needs to be maintained. And then sometimes they'll break, how much is it just for the starter? Then $183 for your starter. How much is it for just the part? We don't actually break it down. That's for the parts and labor and tax and total. That's the entire job. I don't break it down for parts.
You won't even offer them a price on a part?
I don't even offer them. Yeah, because they're going to come back and they're going to say, "No, I can get that started. You're just trying to get at me. You're just trying to get my law."
Not that interesting. You find pushback from your customers on that? You said, "Do or you don't?"
Hardly ever. Yeah.
Now, every state's a little bit different as far as whether or not there's tax on your labor versus on just the parts. So are you when you have that one number, is there a second number for the corresponding tax? It's all billed and bundled in. That's tax included. There it is. All right. Yep. And so behind the scenes, you're just tracking what you need to collect sales tax on, and it comes out that way. Interesting. Now, Kevin, with yours,
and when check out,
yeah,
They want to know the number that they're putting into the credit card receipt. And if you're not giving them that exact number, you got an argument coming.
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait, you said it was $127. You need to be exact. You need to make sure you have the tax total and everything. That's what they're putting into their.
Interesting.
Sure.
Now, Kevin, you said you're actually bringing it out to here are the total parts and here are the total labor. Are you actually, you're actually just taxing the parts in Pennsylvania, right?
We do tax on parts and labor. Yeah. So when I bring
And labor,
metric,
okay.
we'll do that starter, $100, and then the labor, $200. On the same tech metric has it broken down per job. So maybe you're doing a brake job and that's below it and another job below that, but each job is broken down individually. So we just do part labor. So when we sell the job, though, we'll just say it's going to cost $300 to do the job. It has to break down,
Okay.
then we'll explain it out.
Okay. So your estimates are a little bit simpler, but the final invoice has a little bit more information.
Yeah, but I'm interested to see when Jeremy does it that way, how it would work. So we may change that. Like I said, we've been preaching that same philosophy and just didn't follow it yet. So,
okay.
So
Bill,
we've
jump
got
in.
we've got a labor section, a part section, and then at the bottom it's the part, sales tax, shop supplies, total. So we got 4 different jobs. The brake job will start, like you're mentioning, all going to be at the top with all the cost for all that. And then sometimes the bottom, depending on what you're doing, there can be a list because you've got maybe 15, that go into an intake job where you got to replace 7 different O-rings and, bolts. And so it, gets a little bit, see where what you guys are doing makes a little more sense. It's a little cleaner. It doesn't, for as much way of what is this, 75-cent O-ring for? What, less questions, I guess. And like he said they're really more concerned about, is it the same price you told me on the phone? Because that's what I'm agreeing to. How we get there a lot of times is an issue. Here and there we'll run into that, but.
Now, wait, something you just said there, you have a section on your invoice for shop supplies. What's included in that?
Yeah, so that's basically a figure based off of the amount of labor on the ticket, and it calculates, any kind of cleaners that we use, rags, even consider like some tool updates or kind of anything that specialty tools. The other day we had a customer push back, why? I've never seen that before. I said, I've never heard of a place that, 1, didn't charge it, and 2, probably isn't charging more than we are. Some of these places can get pretty high way of shop supplies, which, what? All the power to them, because there is a lot of what we'll call waste or uncharged, way of chemicals and things that get used in the shop that a customer would have no idea goes into a certain job or another. So I had one the other day though, and I said, well, if you want to pay for the special tool, we need, take the $45 off and we could charge you $350 for that tool. But I figured maybe to charge you a percentage of that because, time we use that tool for the next job, that seems to be more fair than charging a customer for, special thing we need for us jobs are more involved. But
are you guys curious to hear how often Bill's having these conversations with people? Bill, how often are people actually asking the details? Is it weekly? Is it daily?
It's not. No, monthly? It's not. It's actually probably once every couple of months, maybe more. Most of the time, it's probably on someone walking in off the street that wants an estimate, and they're breaking down. They're looking through the invoice, trying to figure out what's what. Only some things are easier to understand. Hey, we're taking the engine apart. I'm not going to charge you for every 3M disc we clean with, and this, and a lot of that gets captured in there. There's other things where they'd say, well, what goes into that?
That's interesting because that's actually another part of the customer communication I want to talk about, not just what's on the tickets, but I feel like a lot of times we end up just giving, the shop owners end up giving just bad news. It's going to cost X, right? And you don't necessarily understand why, right? There might be, you mentioned earlier about a light. Depending on the make and model of the car, it might be ridiculously difficult to get to because of the way that they put it together. You have to change it. Oh, it's just a belt. Okay, but I have to take the motor out or whatever the case might. I don't know. You tell me. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so how often are you having those conversations with your estimates? Even if it's one line, the reason it's going to be this is because for this particular make and model, we have to do these extra things. Does that conversation happen off paper?
Very rarely. Most of the time, we had this instance the other day actually where a guy said, "You didn't tell me about a serpentine belt." Sold him a water pump job and included the price of the belt and O-ring and then a little tube connector for on the Land Rover. And there's a few things that you have to do in order to do that job. That was all included in that estimate, but over the phone, we don't break it down to, this is how much labor. This is what it, is what it is for the belt. Here's the water pump. Here's the tubes. No one possibly needs to know or cares. Like, is it going to get done the right way? Perfect. That's, important, but it's pretty rare, but you will have people ask, a lot of times, like I said, it's more the one time or off the street customer you've never seen before. They don't have a rapport with the company yet. And they may have been referred, may not even referred over. A lot of people that are referred from a family member or friend, they're pretty understanding that they're going to get taken care of when they walk in.
And I think the reality is that conversation is really the social intelligence of the service advisor. Here's the estimate. The shock look on your face. Okay, let's talk about it. There's no shock look on the face, then let's not talk about it. Is that a fair thing?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your shop advisors doing? Are they, Kevin, jump in. Are you just handing them the paper, or are you having a conversation with them about at the point of the estimate?
My advisor is trying to educate them on why they're getting what they're getting. And so as much detail as needed as to what's going on. There are times, like Bill said, you're doing a water pump job, like you explained, and then there's other parts involved in it. We don't always go into exact detail of every single part that's going into it, but it's the parts that are needed to do that job. And other times you have to get more detail and explain to them what's going on, why they need these extra parts. So a lot of times it's situational based on the customer and what their understanding of the job is. But we'll go into detail when we need to try and explain to them and educate them honestly.
And what do you do to make sure that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, though, on those instances, like where you're not having all broken down, are you able to see all that for a later date? On the bag, or hey, did we change that part? It just says, total was $450.
On our side of the invoicing system, we can break every part down. So I can see those 10 parts, but the customer might only see just all the parts and just the labor, or like Jeremy does, it's just one price. But we can go back in down the road and see exactly what we replaced. And each line item is specific on the cost and where you got it from and all that information. So we see that later.
Are there requirements from the warranties side of things that you list certain information, or that's allowed to be closed vest?
No, on my parts houses anyway, they require information. So we have to then, if we're printing it out, we have to break down part number, the part brand, all the information that they want. But we can go in and modify it, print it out, give it to them, and then get paid over warranty. So it's a couple of things, but nothing too difficult.
And then again, that's not with the customer. That's only if the customer comes back with a warranty reissue.
If we're going back to our parts house.
Yep. Okay.
How about if you're doing an extended warranty? They probably want that broken
extended
down.
Warranties, you know how they can be. They're difficult to work with at times. So sometimes they want more information, and some we don't even work with. But some of them will have to give them more detailed information.
You choose not to work with certain ones, or they're...
Do we choose to? I'd rather not with certain ones. There's a couple, without saying names, that you probably know are difficult to work with. But I explain it up front to the customer, or my advisors do, that they want to push back. They play the game. And then there's other ones that are so much easier to work with. But the customer's expectation is that they're going to pay for everything. And as well as I do, it doesn't always happen.
I'm curious to know, when you run into these ones that either don't want to pay or have a hard time agreeing with your estimate. We had one the other day. They said, well, average labor rate in your area is this. And I said, that seems really hard to believe, because I think we might be the cheapest around here. And that's under what we're charging. So obviously going from state to state, going to be different because you have different areas and, and see whatever. But do you run into that, or do you just say, sorry, we'll do it for this and that's that? Or how do you handle those?
We run into it where the warranty company is only going to pay for a certain amount. And then we tell the customer that the additional cost is on them. Most times they're paying a smaller percentage than the warranty company. So they're not happy, but they understand. But we get that same pushback from them where they tell us that our labor rate is too high compared to the area, when I know we're right in the ballpark with everyone else. So like I said, the warranty,
they should stop.
You don't want to discount. You want to discount the warranty company.
Right.
Don't give them any kind of discounts whatsoever.
Right.
Because that's all they're trying to do is chew you back. Now, if you want to, on the other end, once your warranty company's paid their part and you go back to your customer and you're trying to save them a little bit of money, and you want to give them a discount, give them a discount.
Sure.
But they're doing everything they can to chew you down on your labor rate, on your part. Absolutely not. this is what the job's going to cost me to do. This is what you're charged. The rest of it, yeah, customer responsibility. I get it. Pay your part.
Mhm.
Your part, I'll work out the customer responsibility with the customer.
Sure.
So,
Their averages that they're coming up with other mechanics in the area, they're obviously including backyard mechanics that don't even offer warranties, right? That's the only way to get that labor rate down, probably. Interesting. Okay.
We had a
All
customer
right.
the other day who got a claim bounced on for a lifter job on a Chevy Avalanche. He had did paperwork for oil changes, and the only reason I bring this up is because I'm curious. They had said, well, it says up to 5 quarts on his invoices, even though they probably were putting 6 in or whatever it called for. So they bounced the claim on him for this work, even though he was probably getting the oil changed with the correct amount of oil, but his invoice was showing something other than that, which makes me say, hey, oil was $79.95 and that was everything. And certain things have no transparency. Yeah, I guess that could be another issue, but it's probably a rare occurrence, but it's just all the more reason to have the kind of things in order correctly on there.
Sure. And insurance companies, as well as warranty companies, like they have an entire claims department whose primary objective is to avoid paying. Like that's their internal mission of that department. And that's a difficult thing. But so they probably are looking for any excuse, right, Bill? So that's a good example. So there are warranties that you offer that actually, depending on what network you're a part of, maybe they transfer to other shops. If they get a job done while they're in tourist season, Jeremy, at your shop, and they get so many miles on the tire or whatever the case might be, they can have that handled by another shop in network. Are you attached to that kind of a program? And so what I'm really wondering is, on the flip side, how often do the three of you take on jobs that are warranties from another shop's work? And how do you get access to what was actually done, especially if they have a single line ticket as opposed to describing what was actually done? Who wants to go first?
yeah, so we're part of a certified auto repair here at O'Reilly. We do a 3-year, 36,000 nationwide warranty. It's a pretty good process how it's set up. There's not a lot of detail that I need from the other shop. There have been times where we've called and we've needed to get additional details on what they did and what's happening now. But as far as the warranty coverage, it's pretty good as far as the certified auto repair warranty. So that has been a good process for us. We also offer here locally a 10-year, 100,000 mile warranty. And we don't see very many. We don't see people are just not hanging on to their cars very long. They're obviously with COVID parts, and it seems like the parts have been going downhill a little bit. We've had a little bit more of the warranty stuff, but that's stuff that we cover here. But overall, we've had a few different warranties through other shops that have come in with the tourists and stuff, but there hasn't been too much. The process is usually pretty simple.
I was
No,
gonna say,
please.
it's been a while since we've had one. We close with the NAP Auto Care Center, so we similar nationwide warranty. In my experience, it's probably been a couple of years since we've had an issue like that from another shop. But the easiest thing I found is jumping on the phone with them is to get more clarity than probably anything on anyone's invoice. They know the customer or the situation, working on it depending on how recent it was. But it really seems it's a pretty flawless thing, I think, as long as, there's a little bit of vetting, I think, to some extent anyway, that these companies want to make sure that the shops that they're affiliating themselves with are actually shops that they should be affiliating themselves with. So don't get kind of backyard mechanic stuff coming through on those kind of claims,
Right.
even when you do have them.
Most of what we talked about so far has been about repair orders. Let's talk about maintenance. What does a maintenance ticket look like? I've got 185,000 miles on my Jeep Grand Cherokee, right? It's due for more than just the oil change the next time I go in. What does a maintenance ticket look like? Who wants to go first?
Our maintenance ticket, which we do a good job of selling maintenance. So brake fluid flushes, coolant flushes, We do them all through BG, and that's just a canned job. But we have to list, we will list the amount of brake fluid that a car takes or quarts of coolant that it takes, whatever it might be. So we'll list out in detail how many quarts, and then the service side, what the labor is. And then basically that's it. And then our BG chemical on top of it. So it's listed out, 3 steps, part, the labor and the additive, and then a total price.
What do you think that's going to look like when you go more towards the Shop Fix Academy approach, which is the less is more, right? What do you think?
I don't know that it'll make as big of a difference because Jeremy said the customer wants a price. So if it's $215, however you get there, whether it's part labor additive, it's $215. So I feel like it would work. We just explain it to the customer over the phone differently, and then the dollar amount is the same.
Do you do a multi-point inspection when you're doing those general maintenances?
We do, yes.
Maintenance
Every car
jobs?
gets a multi-point.
Okay. And is that communicated every time with your tickets or just verbally?
No, we do a virtual, so we'll send them off the inspection report. So the customer has a full detail of what the car looks like, good, bad, or indifferent, and then we sell off of that.
And you're sending that as a text message or an email, whatever the customer prefers?
95% of the time, it's probably a text message.
Text message. Are you then having is the service advisor following up when they come in? Hey, you had these 3 things that were green. That's great. Your car's going to be alive for a lot longer. Or you just focus on the red and the yellow?
No, we do. We actually go over the whole thing. So yeah, we preach on that. Tell them what's good, tell them what's bad, and tell them what they have to worry about later. We grade our services on a 1, 2, and 3. 1 being, you got to do it now. 2 being, you got to do it soon. 3 being, you can do it later.
Sure.
So the customer understands it. So we'll tell them everything that's good, everything that's bad, and everything that they can schedule back another time.
How about you, Jeremy? You want to jump in on this? What do your maintenance tickets look like?
Yeah, so it starts with our digital vehicle inspection that we get to every customer, every car. So in that digital vehicle inspection, we have the maintenance stuff that's on there. That's the lower part of what we go over with the customer. That's usually the last thing that we go over to prevent the repairs and stuff that they're here, unless they're just here for an oil change. Our maintenance ticket will be like if they just come in for a regular oil change, they'll come in, get their lube, and then our technician will go over the entire car. Techmetric's got a plug for Techmetric. They got a great DVI system of just going through the car. If you're not utilizing that on Techmetric, you probably should be, because, oh my gosh, that is a huge selling tool. You can put pictures in there. You can actually take a video of everything that you're just recommending to them. And then fluid service, like Kevin said, we're huge on fluid services. We're a BG shop too. And if I can prevent them coming in for repairs, I'm going to do that. And the only way for me to do that is to do their fluid maintenance. That is a big part of what our tickets usually comprise of as far as our AWR, other than the repair itself. So our kind of list that we go through is what they're here for. So make sure you address that. Make sure that that's done top notch, concern, cause, correction, everything on DVI. You got everything written in. You got good pictures. Then you're going to go down to what we have concerned with safety. You have bad tire rub. You have bad tires. You have this that's about to fall off. This is a safety act. So we address those really hard with them, saying, hey, this is something you need to get fixed today, or this is something you need to get fixed within the next week, or you're not leaving my shop until you get this fixed, or we're sending it out on a tow truck and I'll send it to your house. And then we go down to the maintenance side.
That's bold.
Yeah.
That's bold.
Yeah, there's certain things that, and I've never had any problems with my customers. They're either going to get it fixed, or I think maybe one time over the last 18 years, I've had to tow a vehicle out here because the customer didn't want to get I'll do it for free for them if it comes down to that point if I need to. But that maintenance stuff, man, that's huge. It's good for your ticket, but it's mostly good for your customer.
But on the ticket, it just says on the ticket, does it say LOF and price, or does it say fluid maintenance, or it just says maintenance?
It'll say brake flush. It'll say coolant flush.
So that's actually the most detailed tickets you have. Then is that you actually list the different aspects of each of the flushes and whatnot, each of the coolants and each of the
and why it's important
and why it's important.
Why you do that?
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a breakdown between each service. So like a diff service, coolant flush, system, it is. I found that from back in my dealership days, a 90K service, depending on who sold it or who's working on it, a much different service than what gets performed. So sometimes from my experience anyway, there might be 90K on this car, might be 3 hours, and the next one might pay you 4.5 because it got sold at the same spot, but the parts were only, did the brake flush last time. So don't do that again, So I found the more clear you are, the more clear we are as to what was done and when it was done. I'm not you're working on one type of car, those 10, 20, 30, 40,000, services at those intervals might make more sense. But if you're working on a wide variety of stuff, every manufacturer is so different. And then from model to model, it even becomes different, that I find that the more clear you can be on what you changed and when, with what fluid, you're much better off.
Okay. Are you also doing DVIs or not yet?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we use Auto Vitals, so it integrates
Good.
what with Napa Tracks. I think the Tech Metric one's probably a lot smoother to resolve through the same system, but it's huge.
We had Auto Vitals before we had Tech Metric, and I actually like Auto Vitals. They're a little bit better.
I will say hands down, though, to what you said about maintenance, that is probably the most overlooked thing when you're not doing some sort of DVI, when there's not a checklist to go down to say, hey, is the coolant okay? Hey, are the spark plugs okay? Or what, there's a service recommendation for them or an interval for them. Cause most of the time that kind of stuff can get, in my shop, at least before we went to DVIs, a lot of that could get overlooked until there was a problem with fire check engine light, something like that. Oh yeah, plug are probably a good idea. It's got enough miles, but been in there for 70,000 miles too long at this point anyway. They should be done as per the manufacturer recommends. And that's where I found, DVI or the digital inspections help the most.
Either of you guys a part of?
You gotta have those.
I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Go ahead.
No, just a question. Are there either of your shops part of Carfax service history? Do you report to them? Do you use that as well?
Do not.
Jeremy, do your guys go back often and look at services that were sold?
I do. Yeah, we go back and look at that. Even though it says it was sold, we still do test strips on all our fluid, make sure that a coolant, the brake.
That was my next question.
Depending on,
we use it, but we don't.
We also go back in our history too.
Right. We use that Carfax, but we don't always verify it. So if it says that they had it 10,000 miles ago, we may not check certain things to see if that was accurate or whatever it might be. So that you actually have your guys tested anyway.
How detailed are those? Like thinking of when I've bought a car in the past or something, they might say, check that, checked. Are your Carfax histories a little more detailed than what you would see on like a dealer's website when you look at a car and it shows you the Carfax?
Pretty detailed.
I agree.
As far as service.
Gives you the service, the date, and the mileage, but pretty detailed as to what it is.
That's what it was. Okay.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
You're not trying to sell something that was just sold, even if we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens a lot where your service writers, if your technicians aren't doing their due diligence of going back and checking history, and then your service writers are too busy to go back and check history, and then you're selling that to your customer, you just lost all trust with your customer. All trust. You just did that 5,000 miles ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Never mind. You don't need that.
Well, maybe if your invoices were a little bit more detailed, you would have done that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry.
Things that I like when that is a huge pet peeve of mine of, did we do this or has this been done or, we've seen this before we called them. But even better than that is, we noticed that sway bar link was loose and we also noticed we did it 11 months ago. We're just going to change that, warranty for you. And they really appreciate that kind of, just doing it, not saying anything and the right thing, but they appreciate the fact that one, you're looking and two, you're actually looking back and taking ownership of, what you're responsible for.
So credibility for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a valid point. It's a huge point. That's why I'm asking, or did ask about how often and how much time are you spending on the stuff that is good with the car? The ones, is it the ones that were the good and the three were the bad?
Ones are bad. Ones are doing now. Threes are doing later.
All right. So I feel like there's plenty of time to be spent also on the threes or the greens so that you're making them feel good about their situation. You're building that trust, that confidence. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything you don't need. This is why we're going to let this sit. Or as Bill was saying, we got ahead of this before it actually happened. I feel like that's not done enough. I feel like that's an opportunity missed more times than not because we get so busy trying to just get the next car out. And I think that gets missed. But
I think
anyway.
the big thing too is giving them a big picture of, hey, this is worth the investment because in 6 months, I don't see something else that, that we can foresee. Obviously you can't see everything, but hey, if I know in 6 months you're going to need front brakes and 4 tires, well, maybe you make a different decision about putting another $1,000 or $2,000 into a repair on something else right now, knowing that you've got another $1,000 or $2,000 coming down the road. Well, time to start looking for a new car, or, so that they're aware. You give them the whole, give them as much as you can. And that's where I think the, yellow, red is great. Definitely hitting on those points of, these are good, but they won't be good for long, or they're, not going to be good when snow comes. That's the thing we see right about now. All the people that were warned about tires 4 months ago will start trickling back in here once we start to get that first snowfall.
Yeah. Yeah. On their way to get the bread and the milk. I guess what I'm wondering is, how often do these minimized invoices end up with someone say, all right, so they have a repair done, and then they have a different repair, and they don't realize that second repair is not related to the first. You can see that, you can tell that, but they feel like it's the same thing, right? I just had my car at your shop last week. Does a detailed invoice ever actually help with letting them know that this is a completely different issue? It's not related, because the average person has no concept of what is and what isn't as far as what works together and what connects. Bill, your invoice is the most detailed. Have you used your past invoices to show the customer and say, no, that is not something that we address. That's different.
There's definitely coolant hose, for example, might show up on the ticket, coolant hose. Well, the car has 15 of them. You just changed the coolant hose. What do you mean it's leaking? Well, it was a different one. So we try and detail as much as, hosing under the notes section, from heater core to engine, or upper radiator hose, or, it's later on. It's like, well, just did that hose. Like, so, this from here to there, or from, specific enough that we're not questioning and the customer can understand. But as far as, just paid for this, how, or, 2 repairs overlapping, or should they have been done at the same time, or, you charge 2 different labor for that. And I think really comes down to, we'll bring someone out and show them exactly where this or that is under the car if they're willing to come and see. I think when you're willing to offer that kind of transparency, they're less likely to really care to see it. They're more worried, you know what I mean? There will be people that are just interested, but more of the times than not, I think if you're willing to say, hey, I'll show you, more will take you at your word. I think a lot of times, obviously telling the truth, and that is the number one thing, but being able to, it's always been my philosophy is, you might not like what we have to say, the condition of your car is in, but if you go down the street, they're going to, as long as they're looking at it, they're going to tell you the same thing. So we're not going to tell you something you don't need, but we're also not going to tell you something's okay if it's not.
So Jeremy, you have the opposite approach on the invoices, right? Or the tickets. How often do people come back and say, I thought I just had this done? And how do you address it? Do you address it similarly as Bill did at the end? Come on back, we'll put your car on the lift, I'll show you.
Yeah, so we are actually super detailed as well, like Bill said, as far as what we're doing. So that comes into our DVI on our concern, cause, and correction. We will have it spelled out very well as far as what parts we're replacing and why we're replacing them. But we do have those customers that come back in and they got multiple issues, and we address one of their engine light concerns, but their engine light came back on. We told you that you had 5 different engine lights. We addressed this one. You declined addressing these other issues. Those lights will come back on. So it's just building that trust in, and then you have those customers that just don't understand. And then you do your due diligence of explaining, to taking them out to the shop, to really just laying everything out. They have no other argument. This is everything.
Well, that actually, I'm sorry, real quick, Jeremy, it sounds like the key to having the least amount of information on the end tickets with the price is actually a strong, well-detailed DVI.
Yeah.
Where there's no price.
Have to have it. Yeah.
I'd say for anyone listening that's not doing DVIs, at the very least, I think one of the most important things that, and Jerry was talking about, is like anything that's lit up on that dashboard when that car comes in. Like he said, you may have worked on a check engine light and it might have come on for something else, but there's a lot of cars that come in with lights on that they have no interest in fixing, but then yet they'll be happy to say, hey, that wasn't on before I came to see you. It's one thing I've found that the DVI, for nothing else, is a good way to cover your butt and say, hey, this was, the problem when the car drove in. And so be surprised when that light is still on. It leaves unless we're fixing it. But
yeah, interesting. Kevin, I imagine it's the same with you. The detailed DVI is what's going to get you the path forward to keeping the end tickets simplified.
Yeah, we are very detailed on the DVIs as well. So the more the customer knows, the easier it is for them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. We try and tell them everything. We'll bring them out to the car, send them the DVI, show them the pictures, the videos, so that they know exactly what it is that we're doing. And then on the ticket, I'm probably not as detailed as Bill, but a little more detailed than Jeremy. But they understand what it is through that DVI. Yeah, strong DVI for sure.
But you said you're going to think about moving towards the Jeremy model.
I am, because of what Shop Fix Academy is. They preached in the past. I just never fully bought into that side of it. But hearing how he had good success.
Hearing it working. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Hearing it working might actually make it happen. So what do you think? You're going to try to do it in the next 6 months?
Oh, yeah, probably even less than that.
Yeah? What's your time frame?
Next month.
Okay. All right. I'd be interested in circling back and hearing what the feedback is from the customers after you've done that. So
give it back to you.
That'd be great.
I'm curious to know, and I think, speaking from experience, a lot of these things were like, I don't know if I want to change it. I don't know if I can change it. Everyone's gonna say something when I change this, and then we do it as like, you said anything in 2 years? I don't think anyone even noticed that, we're anyone of $2 or afraid of having chops. And so do you guys feel like you can get in your own way with some of that?
Well, every day, bro.
Every
day. I second guess myself every day.
Yeah.
In fact, my service manager a lot of times will make a decision just because she knows I won't make one at a time. So she's like, just tell me give me the options and I'll pick one. Okay. And then she'll do it. But a lot of times I'll get my own way.
Jeremy, what was your question?
Decisions that are good for the customer and also what's good for your business. You got to make sure you protect yourself. You're doing your business due diligence for your employees and for your customers. Yeah. So I had a quick question from the guys. Do you guys do estimates over the phone without looking at a vehicle?
Never, ever.
We will, but definitely with telling them this is, totally irrelevant if we don't even make sure that you need what you're asking for. A lot of times we'll say, oh, I was at the dealer. They told me, why don't you bring the car in? We take a look at it, figure out what you actually need, and then I can price it out, because it really doesn't matter if I'm cheaper than, I guarantee you we could be cheaper than the dealer, but you might only need half of what they're telling you. So would I bother giving you an $1,800 estimate when you need $400 for the work?
So Bill, have you found that like when you give them a price over the phone, that's the price that gets stuck in their head and that's the price that they want to pay at the end?
We make sure that it's clear that, hey, this is not including any kind of diagnostic charge. We also, on a lot of things, won't feel comfortable just changing what you're asking us, unless it's a set of wipers or something that's, obviously, if their side your mirror off and it's clear as day that, not going to be anything more involved. But no, on a lot of stuff where it's someone else told me and I'm just looking for a price on it, we make clear to them, this is what it costs, but in order, the price of the repair, but we also do charge a fee to look at it and verify that this is in fact what you need. Otherwise, we can't stand behind what, the problem is still there after we replace what you asked for. As much as we could say, well, you asked for it, we all know as well as I do, that doesn't really work. Their goal was to get their car fixed. So trying to be upfront and clear with them, like, I'm happy to give you an estimate, but that's really all it's really just you could almost call it a guesstimate without seeing the car.
A random number. Yeah. It sounds like you've got answer envy. You like Kevin's answer better, which was no.
Yeah, I'm sure Jeremy has been trained the same way. So we call it a 15-minute no wrench inspection. come on in, let's get a look at your car, see what it is. We'll get, DVIs on it. For no charge, we're just going to put it up in the air and take a look. Might be a rattle, might be a check engine light, might be a leak. And we're one of three ways we're going to go. We're either going to see what it is and give them a price, tell them they need more diagnostic work, and we got to pull this apart to see that. Or, hey, it's just that bad. We're not interested in doing it. Your car is, telling them it is that bad. But so, yeah, one way or the other, we're going to get them in the door and get a look for 15 minutes. And I tell my guys, it's like a return on investment. Put that car up in the air, spend 15 minutes on it. I don't want you to pull anything apart. I don't want you to go too detailed, too deep into it, but find out what, and then get them in that way. A lot of
the reality is your closing rate is going to be through the roof compared to just an over the phone estimate.
Yeah.
You get them in there and experiencing you and your team, right? You're going to be more likely to make that repair for them.
And over the phone, they're really looking for price. So it doesn't matter what everything else is. It's just, can you beat the price? Like Bill said, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Maybe you don't need all that. So it's not always about price. But once they come in and meet you, then everything changes.
The reason I would say we don't just say no, I now understanding how you said it. Saying no to me would tear the other end of the phone hanging.
Right. And a lot of times you lose because you don't know what the price is. So you're just higher, so you lose. Or you're lower and you come in, they come in, and you do the job, and now you found out that it needs 2 extra parts, and now you're more money. So they think that you're trying to oversell them something else. So for me, it's a loss all around. I'd rather have that customer come in and see me. Plus the fact that my service advisor is now taking up his 10 or 15 minutes of time to search parts, to look up labor, and whatever it might be, for no reason at all.
Yeah.
It's interesting because
I got a great example of one, the 2013 or 14 F-150, went to a Ford dealer. They were a regular customer for me, but went to a Ford dealer. They needed a evaporator, and they said Ford quoted me an evaporator and an actuator for $3,000. That sounds a little high, but let me just see what it would cost me to do it. I'm like, yeah, we can do it much cheaper than that, but unfortunately, we've had problems with the Ford dealer here, and I don't trust what they're saying. You may not need an evaporator whatsoever. They may be spot on with what they needed. Anyway, I got the customer in the door and just said, hey, let's just check it out. Let's just verify what they're saying. If you want Ford to do it, that's great. I can do it a heck of a lot cheaper. Got them in the door, looked it over. They did. They needed an evaporator. They didn't need an actuator. And it was only like $1,200 for me to do that job, and saved them $1,800 on doing that job. But they needed quite a bit more maintenance. I ended up selling that ticket for $4,000. That's $1,000 over what Ford quoted them for just fixing the evaporator. But I maintained all of their fluids. I put tires on their car. I gave them a much better car, giving it back to them, even though it was $4,000 more. But you build that trust and you build that. But I didn't give her a price. I just told her, we can do that much cheaper, but let's just verify.
Yeah. And Bill, there was a long time where I would give prices over the phone before the shop fix mentality, and it was hard to switch that. I would work so hard to try and, when I was on the counter, trying to get that sale for somebody I didn't know, for a car I never saw. And it was really just based on price. So it was hard to say no, but I realized after that it was better.
Yeah.
Well, it hurts at times, though, to be honest.
It probably feels like you're trying to be, I wonder if, depending on how you deliver, I need to look at your car. It might sound like you're actually trying to hide something or trying not to share something with them, right? Like by trying to be verbal initially, it might seem like you're trying to be more transparent with them, but you're just hurting yourself and you're hurting them by not actually looking at it first. As Jeremy, you said the word verify, right? That's just it, right? The customer was told this. Okay, that's great. That's a good starting point, but I need to verify that before I give you an actual number.
We find that with Jeremy's point too, with some of these bigger jobs, like timing chain job on a car with 150,000 miles, where the actuators are coming off, cam gears, you got solenoids, it's like all the stuff's coming apart. It's got 150,000 miles on it. The dealer, from what we've found, is willing to go in there and just put a chain on it and leave everything. And 1,000 miles down the road, if one of those gears go bad, now all of a sudden you're too bad, so sad. We're going, we can be a lot cheaper than we can then be, because we're like, hey, if this was my car, this is the way I would do it, because I don't want to go back in there in 10,000 miles and pay another you know, and also I wouldn't feel right saying, oh yeah, we just did that 6 months ago, but now we got to go back in there a second time. So point, I guess it is, the estimate is really not very accurate. I get a lot of sense over the phone. So
One of my
you're
favorite
not
sayings,
comparing apples to apples most of the time.
one of my sayings to my guys is, and it was an old commercial back in Philadelphia, probably not in your area. It was a jeweler, and an educated customer is your best customer. And I found that to be so true. If the customer understands why you're doing something, so it needs a timing belt, but here's why we're putting these other 10 parts in there to get you a better job, and you're going to last longer, and you're not going to see us again. So yeah, it's going to cost you more, but of course you're less in the long run. So I preach that, educate the customer on what it needs completely, let them make the decision, but we'll never go without planning things to them.
I've got a burning question regarding invoices and transparency. The new thing, at least in our area, seems to be credit card fees on the from a lot of our dealers that we're buying parts from now. If I go in there with a debit card, they're charging 3% on, you know, signs all over the door. And we've had shops call us, hey, are you guys charging for credit card fees? No, we're not. I'm curious to hear your guys' take on it, but that seems
That's
to
a great
be
question.
you know,
I have a hard time no matter where I go, whether it's a restaurant or a store or whatever, if I'm buying something and they charge me that fee, it doesn't sit well with me. So I don't do it to my customers, because in this business, they're already upset when they walk in the door that they need whatever it is. And then you hit them over the head with that fee. I feel like they're even more mad at you. So in my opinion, I say put it somewhere else, whether it's your shop supplies or the part increase or the labor increase. Just find another way to put it on the invoice, but I don't charge for it now.
I think it's just the dealers in our area that do that. They're the only ones that I know of that do that. So, but they're already priced so high, they can't raise their labor rate anymore. So they have to charge you that 3% fee.
It is a growing trend. And interestingly enough, our very first podcast of the Garage Grid podcast specifically was about that topic and trying to figure out whether or not you pass this on. And one of the things that came into the conversation was the median age of your customer base. Just think about that for a little bit. What's the median age of your customer base? So I look around the screens here, and I too have an issue with, like, I flinch, right? And so I've actually started to pay cash in certain places because I don't want to pay that even though it's a small amount, it's on the groceries. I don't want to pay it, so I'm paying cash, right? So what we found was the shops with the higher median age had more pushback on the credit card fee. The shops with a lower median age had less pushback on it.
I can see that.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering, and this is something for you to wonder, is your marketing dialed in so that you're getting a larger base of age groups? Because eventually the 75-year-olds aren't going to be driving anymore, hopefully. But now that I'm wearing reading glasses on a regular basis, I had an epiphany. You ever get behind an older driver and they're driving so slow? I now know why they're driving so slow, because I have trouble seeing the speedometer on my dash unless I have my reading glasses. They think they're going fast. They don't know. That's my theory. I don't know. But in seriousness though, if you do consider it, maybe increase your marketing so that you're actually getting a larger group of a slightly younger group. Everyone's nodding in agreement. Jeremy, you're not nodding in agreement. What are you thinking? You're having a thought. I can see the wheels turning.
My target age group is 45 to 65. If they're younger than that, then typically they're shopping around trying to get it for the cheap things. Don't have money. So that 45 to 65 age group is my target group, and that's who I market towards. So the younger generation, yeah, I'll take them all day long. I'll educate them all, but that's not
charging them 3%.
I need people that can actually pay for the repairs that they need.
That's a reasonable point. I've been asked, A Shop Marketing is a marketing company for repair shops, and I've been asked why we don't spend a lot of time for our shops on TikTok or Instagram. And I'm not saying that those platforms aren't valuable or useful. It's because the age group that are on Facebook are more likely to have a family and are more likely to care that their chariots are well cared for because they've got a baby in the back, right? Before I had a baby in the back, I didn't care. If I broke down, no big deal. I had a pair of sneakers I could change into, and I can walk up to 10, 15 miles in a day, no big deal, right? So, I mean, that was the attitude when I was in my 20s. very different than, but your age group is interesting, 45 to 65. I would have thought you would have said like 30, early 30s, but you don't even bother with those first 10 or 15 years.
Well, it's not that I directly market to those people, but that's my target age group. We don't market to everybody, but
Yeah, but the style of your marketing is going to appeal to one group versus another. That's a reality.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
I need to transition and make sure that I'm keeping up with what the future's, coming. I need to do the social marketing. I need to do all those things too. But,
Well, how does this apply to transparency? Does somebody who is 60 want to know more versus someone who is 28? Do they like the details versus the no details? Is there a thought on that?
Yeah. My older clientele definitely wants to know more than the younger clientele. Younger clientele just wants to know price and when am I going to get it back? The older clientele wants to know the details of what it is and make sure it's safe. They're not as interested in the speed as they are as the accuracy and understanding what's going on. Yeah, the younger generation today doesn't know a whole lot about vehicles, nor do they care. To Jeremy's point, just when can I have my car back? Quite fine.
Okay. And what is the median age or target age group for your customer base?
I don't really have a target age. I market to everybody, but I'd rather the older generation, like myself, my age, I'm 53. Yeah, probably from like mid-30s on up. Under that, they're just not as interested in car repair.
And so now I'm going to push back. Earlier, you said you're going to switch to the Shop Fix Academy approach, right? Less is more. I'm going to check back with you after you've done it in a month or two and see if you've gotten any pushback from those older clientele.
Yeah, curious. Like I said, we'll explain it to them over the phone, but in the invoice, and it's funny because we do send out the invoices, whether it's a text message or an email, but the older clientele, they just want a hard copy. So for those, we print them out. Some will take email and a text message, but they probably never get looked at once they get them.
Yeah. And if you have bills set up on his invoices, you could actually put that under shop supplies, paper costs, $10.
Why not? We can find a way to get it on.
Bill, what's your age group? What's the, not your personal, but your customer base?
I think similar to Jeremy, early 40s to mid 60s to be the sweet spot where, we're generally settled into a career. We have a family. Things are time is more important. I will say my experience alone after having 4 kids, there's things that I would have certainly done on my own before time was more of the essence, where I didn't mind if I was going to go ride my sewer for 3 or 4 hours, save $300 from paying a plumber, where now it's like, no, I'll just pay. Yeah, could I do it? Sure. But is it worth my time now? No. So you definitely get to a point where you realize some things it's not worth saving the money and just get it done right and be done with it, move on. So I see that. I will say though, the older generation, the thing that I see more of is, I remember, and maybe not only them, but I remember when a battery was $50. Why is a battery $100? As if they bought one yesterday, and people buy one every 5 years. So that, spark plugs used to be 60 cents when I was a kid, and now they're $24. Those are there's a generation there where there's definitely more pushback on what things used to cost, and people my age don't realize that because that was never a thing. 30s, you driving a car for 15 years and you've probably only been paying to fix it for maybe 10 of those years. Your parents probably help you out for 20s.
Yeah. My mind goes to the 5-cent candy bars. Supposedly my dad tells me that they were giant and they were only 5 cents. And same thing. But so I think I would agree with Kevin's assessment then, Bill, is that find a different place to put that 3%, because based on that age group that you're talking about, they're going to have some pushback. Now I have some contacts in the credit card space, and they'll tell you that there are ways where you're not automatically charging it. You're actually offering them a cash discount or same as cash discount. Instead of charging the 3% fee, this is the price with the 3% fee. Or you could pay 3% less by paying it in one of these mechanisms, ACH or those types of things. Not specifically greenback, but that's obviously an option as well. What would your thoughts be to something like that, to try to position it as a discount instead of a 3% charge? Do you think that older clientele would be okay with that?
We definitely have people that will do that. We'll offer, they want to pay cash. We'll do it at 3%. We'll take 3% off. We've never considered adding it on for credit card fees. I was more curious because I've heard of, in the similar boat
Right.
where I don't prefer it. I don't really like it, so I wouldn't push that on someone. But we've got certain people, and every time they'll happily pay cash and take 3% off.
Right.
Would religiously. So,
And with that
fine
in
with
mind, Bill, then you could potentially just automatically add it somewhere and then offer the cash discount. Now, there are correct ways to do it to make sure that you're in compliance with those rules, but you could potentially implement a system like that where you're actually letting them know, hey, if you're going to, because that's actually the message, right? Is if you're going to use your credit card, you're going to get your points, you're going to get your airline points. That's fine, but you need to pay for those airline points, not us, right? That's actually the message at that point. And again, it's all about the communication.
approach, cash price
Right.
or credit card
Right.
price.
And there's, like I said, there's still cash alternatives that are same as cash,
Sure.
like Venmo or something like that. Jeremy, any thoughts on that? Would you consider positioning that?
We don't do cash discounts. We just tout it as we don't charge the 3%. So
Okay.
that is your discount.
Yep.
So we don't do a cash discount. We haven't had any really pushback. We had a lady just last week ask, "Will you guys have a cash discount?" No, we don't. But we don't charge you 3% like you do when you go to the dealer. They're usually pretty happy with that.
So we've got no discounting. Someone asked, we try and set the price fair, and that way there's no question about, well, somebody argued for 15 minutes and you took off $12. Now, discount, 3% for cash. That's our discount. If you want, take it. If not, that's fine too.
Okay.
But we, try and stay away from that. So that's kind of the short answer for
Yep.
someone asking.
Whether you guys offer financing, Easy Pay or Snap,
No.
Jeremy, you do. No. We do it. Well,
Yeah, we got Trinity, and then we have
Qualify.
Qualify.
We use Easy Pay and Snap.
And we're getting set up on Snap.
Yeah, Snap's pretty good, but we do a lot on financing. People don't have the money today, but they can pay for it over the next 3 months or in 100 days. I think one of them is that for us. You avoid the discount because when they're going that route,
Right,
they're getting finance, so they're not asking for a discount. We do a fair amount of, not a lot, but a fair amount of. But as far as discounts go, we'll offer a discount, AAA or military, police, fire. Again, in my opinion, they're already coming in upset that their car broke down. So by offering them a little bit of a discount, it makes them happy. Makes them want to come back again.
interesting. Okay. All right. So we've been chatting for quite a bit now, longer than I was expecting. I think it's been a great conversation, though. I think there's something to be thinking about as far as how much to share on the tickets, but also in the DVIs. I think that's actually the main point, right? Was be detailed on the DVIs and be light on the final page. And I think that's the summation. But find out what works for you and with your shop, obviously. And if you have questions about or you want to continue this conversation, we actually have a private Facebook group page that you can come to join us, and you can access that from our garagegrit.aashop.com website. All of those links will be in the show notes, and we'll actually have all the resources in our show notes as well. Any final thoughts from you guys before we wrap up? Any summations? Do you guys want to add a final question that you didn't get a chance to ask?
Not for me.
Okay. Bill and Jeremy, you're good?
And all good.
Thanks, so. Yep.
Okay. All right. Again, thanks for each of your time to be here as well. I appreciate you taking the time out of the day middle of the day to do this. Thank you so much. And we'll put this is the live stream, but we'll actually put this out on Spotify and Apple as well as YouTube early next week. And so feel free to share it with your friends or your contacts or your Shop Fix Academy friends and let them know that you were talking positively of them. See? So they'll appreciate that. Maybe they'll give you a cash discount. Who knows? I don't know. No? Okay. Very good. All right. Again, thank you so much, guys, for being here. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with each of you after the podcast at another time.